Hey guys, everyone, Brian Duwork. I'm back with the deck profile video. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I just had to kind of show off my Examon deck. I don't know, I was hoping, I don't know if there was an Examon player who ranked higher than me. I just don't know the deck list, but if there was, please reach out. I'd like to pick your brain for some of the concepts you had versus what I had. But let's get into what worked for me. I pretty much picked Examon early in, once pretty much EX3 came out, I saw success with it at my locals, and I just kept it as my deck to pick for nationals for sure. Yeah, and that's my pretty much experience with the deck. You know, I've only had like 2 sets to play it, but I think it's a pretty formidable deck, and I plan to use it mainly for the upcoming tournaments. Let's talk about why it works for me. First, we'll start with the eggs. In this current format, I honestly think 4 eggs is enough for most matchups. I didn't find myself really raising out too much unless it was like absolutely necessary or for certain like other lines of play. Like my hand has a lot of rookies, so I want to just cycle and to find the bigger top end. So let's talk about why only this egg. This egg is really important because it allows you to get your main source of removal for the deck is blocking. So anytime that you have Digimon like Examon or Digimon that can suspend and unsuspend, they gain a DP. And also the thing is, whenever a Drummon unsuspends, it's all the guys with this egg will trigger. So it actually doesn't have to be the Digimon itself that's unsuspending, but as long as some kind of Drummon or Examon is unsuspending during the turn, that DP is gonna boost and be permanent for the current turn. Okay, so that's why DP is so important. And then that means your Examon blockers are gonna be at minimum 16K, and your Digimon blockers, if it's the full stack, is gonna be a minimum of 13K, which, you know, it can be problematic for a lot of Digimon to deal with. So again, the main source of removal for this deck is blocking. Okay, so yeah, that is the perfect, because DP is king. Next, we'll go on to the rookies. I chose to run 11 rookies, which were 4 of the new Dracomon, 4 of the newer Searcher Dracomon, and 3 Floodgates Madoki Beta. Originally, the deck was at 12 when I was playing testing with a 2-2 split of Madoki and Sayako. But what I found during playtesting is that Sayako ended up not being as effective as Madoki. Sayako was a good idea. However, having only 2 of them in the deck means that you're most likely not going to see it early, and that's when it's the most beneficial. And usually it was to counter the Black War Gray matchup. And I found that sometimes Sayako misses timing compared to Madoki. Like if you don't have the Sayako early, then it kind of is useless because they go up into their stack, it's already over. The Sayako phase has pretty much, once they go past that level 4 Greymon X antibody, the Sayako is pretty much a useless card. Whereas Madoki, late game can still be beneficial because Red Mem Boost is a card, and also other decks run Memory Boost. You can also play against blue matchups like I did with Ulforce that not only run Blue Mem Boost, but they can potentially run like Ice Wall, something that can just be in security, and Madoki can counter that pretty well. But let's talk about the important rookies, not the Floodgates. The Floodgate was cool, he worked out, but let's talk about the important rookies. These Drummons, or the Dracomons, are really important because they allow your core Drummons to Digivolve for 1 less, because they have that name of Dracomon. This Dracomon specifically is a searcher, and it also provides a green source for your green blue options like Megadeth or Gigadeath. So the purpose of this is not only to search, because you get to do top 4 for Exa and a Drummon, but the inheritable is actually insane as well. The inheritable allows you to pretty much, whenever a Drummon is suspended or Examon is suspended, this current Digimon gains 1000. That means like if you were to attack 6 or attack with your Examon, right? And this is sitting on something just like a Cordramon, or with this immediately becomes a 7K Digimon, meaning it comes out of range of Flame Hell Scythe, it hits out of range of gosh darn it, Crimson Blaze. Yeah, Crimson Blaze. And it's a really strong mechanic, all turns. And usually if you have the play of the Slayer Dramon, you can trigger this ability quite often. So just really important egg, and really important rookie, great searcher, great inheritable, great art. Like everything about this card is awesome. And then next we have the new Dracomon. The main ability of playing a Dramon or Blue Flare never came up. I don't think, if it came up, I was such an advantageous point where I didn't care to draw, but even though it's mandatory, I wasn't gonna deck out or anything. It was just like, it didn't matter. However, this inheritable literally is insane. This Dracomon allows you to pretty much gain 2 memory for your Exa play if you go for the hard cast of a 5 after raising the 5. For Exa players, know what that means. Basically, you have a 5. If this is your rookie for the 5 that you're bringing up, when you play the opposite color Dramon that you need, you're going to gain a memory. So that makes that cost a 6 cost play, pretty much. But then you end of turn Jogress, and then Examon's ability lets you spit out another Dramon. So that's technically, because the Examon's a new Digimon, this ability refreshes and you gain another memory. So that essentially turns your 7 cost play into a 5 cost play, which is a lot less memory to pass over than 7, especially if they have a memory tamer already. Like, it's just awesome. It's you're not giving your opponent too much memory to go into Examon, which is why that egg is super important. Okay, and we'll go there. Next, we got the 4s. We got 3 of the Evade Core Dramon, 3 of the Blocker Core Dramon, and 4 of the Security Core Dramon. Only 10. I think 10 was a good number. I found that I wasn't really bricking at the level 4 as much as I was bricking the top end sometimes, because the top end is what you need for the deck. But my reasoning for this ratio is basically, these will make you Digivolve for 3 if it's a Madoki Betamon. So you never wanted that to happen, but sometimes you have to do the play. Like sometimes Madoki's your only rookie, and then you Digivolve and pass 3. It's not the end of the world because you're still progressing your line, but if you can, you would prefer to Digivolve for 2, giving your opponent less. And what's awesome about these abilities is that even if I have a Dracomon in raising and I want to just do a 3 cost play, you can technically still Digivolve for the 3 costs because he's still a green or a blue Digimon. So that's something that's really unique about this deck too. These different Evo costs, even with the 1 and 0, if it's a Babydoll, like this, you can treat this as a blue egg still, Digivolve for 1, and then choke your opponent to 1 on a turn 1 play, even though it's not the best play, but you give your opponent less resources to deal with and to use. So that's just something that's very unique about this deck, the different play costs. But let's go back to why this ratio is important to me. Because the deck is required to run 4 and 4 of the Wing Dramon and Ground Dramon, you're basically gonna have 7 of the same abilities of Evade and Blocker inheritable. Meaning, I just wanted a consistent number. 7 seemed like a really good number of them to have, and maxing out on this Core Dramon is what allows you to basically either high roll your opponent or get you back in the game when you're behind. This is probably one of the most important cards that can come out of Security, just because if you have a Davis established, hopefully you do, or just if they give you at least 3 memory to deal with. If they have given you 3 memory and this pops out of Security on the last swing or on the swing and they can't deal with it, you can go into Exa for a huge play because you can go Evo for level 5, hard cast the other level 5, end of turn Jogress. Ideally, if you're in a no board situation, you went from a no board situation to Examon and potentially another Slayer or a Breaker on the board. And just because they hit this out of Security, this card is extremely cracked for the deck. And it also helps you on brick. If you see them all in your hand early, it feels a lot better, in my opinion, to put this out for 6, draw 2, and maybe draw the rookie or draw the Wingdra that you're looking for, than hard casting a level 5. Yes, this one's actually not bad to have because it has evade and it's harder to deal with, but unless you have a full line besides the rookie in your hand, this could also just be another, you just gave your opponent 5. Yeah, sure, it sticks on the board, but you're still dealing with the breaking problems next turn unless you do have a level 5 to Evo with. So again, this is just why I think those Cordramons were, that is the ratio of Cordramons I would use. So far we got 11, 10. And next we got just a no-brainer, to be honest. If you're playing the Examon list, you already know that this card, these two cards are super cracked for the end of turn Jogress ability. They are end of turn Jogress, but these cards specifically can be used as a level 6, or no, they treat Examon as a level 6. So you need at least one of them on the board versus, and either you can have both of them, and they both are treated as level 6, or you can have one of these level 5s and the opposite color level 6 to do the DNA end of turn. Because this is the card that allows the end of turn, not these guys, not the breakers or the slayers, but so in this weird situation where you think, like, don't do this because it's happened to me during playtesting. Say you already have this breaker established on the board just because, like, you had to. You bring out the Grounder from raising and say that your opponent gives you 2. You can't Digivolve for Slayer and then Jogress because they don't have the end of turn Jogress ability. It's the level 5s that do the end of turn. So as long as the Examon player has one of the 5s and the opposite color 6, then you can end of turn Jogress. Okay, but I digress. These are basically just an upgraded version of the blue and green Cordramon. Groundramon is just a blocker himself. He can Digivolve onto a Cordramon for 3, or he can pay the 4 cost to Digivolve for 4. Again, choke plays, it's really awesome to just choke your opponent out with this lineup. And then, yes, this treats Examon. This card allows you to treat Examon like a level 6 so that you can Digicross a 5 and 5 or 5 and 6, doesn't matter each way. And then end of turn, you can Jogress and inheritable blocker. And then this is just the evade version of the card itself. So when you're building your stack, you always want to mix blue and green if possible, just so that you can have an evade blocker. Not always the case, but sometimes just a blocker with Slayer Dramon will pretty much wreak havoc on your opponent's board. So let's go to the level 6s, which are pretty much the broken parts of the deck. Mainly Slayer, but let's just talk about Breaker Dramon first. Breaker Dramon, whenever he is suspended all turns, once per turn, you get to suspend something. And also another all turns effect, which is once per turn, is that if you were to delete a Digimon, if a Dramon were to delete a Digimon by battle and survive, you get to trash the top of your opponent's security. The inheritable, the exact same as its on-board ability. So that's something that I really like about this deck, is that the consistency of your effects. As long as you see the card, Digivolve on the board, doesn't matter. Usually it'll have a blocker mechanic like this guy. He gives blocker. He is a blocker and provides blocker inheritable. And Breaker Dramon trashes life on the board, or he trashes life in your inheritable. So it's extremely crazy how many breakers can trigger, and your opponent out of nowhere is thinking, whoa, I just lost 3 life from 1 attack. It's kind of crazy. And yeah, this Breaker Dramon just makes the deck feel even safer than and more oppressive, especially when you can attack, force their blocker to suspend, and then they're like, oh crap, I set up this blocker and it's actually useless. And yeah, it kind of is, but that's something that I thought was really great. But let's talk about the real MVP of the deck. This is by far the most important card of the deck. This is what convinced me to play the deck in general. Slayer Dramon's effect is just so oppressive to any kind of stack building deck. If it forces your opponent to attack as their first action right out of inherit phase or raising phase. And again, like I said, the main source of removal for this deck is blocker. So having either the Ground Dramon or the Core Dramon blocker inheritable underneath the Slayer just, again, provides you with a very good removal. And a Slayer, essentially, if you go up the full stack, can be a 14k blocker if you have the Draco inheritable, or just a 13k blocker because he always unsuspends. So yeah, early rush of Slayer Dramon can just sometimes outright win you the game, and not even Examon himself, even though Examon is pretty oppressive. But the forcing your opponent to attack will not allow them to tuck an X ante underneath, means they can't Digivolve. That you can also just not allow them to Digivolve after the fact. That's because like Grandis wants to raise right at level 5 to do their whole full combo, but guess what, Okuamon is not going to live up to Slayer Dramon's block. Like it's just not going to happen. So it's a really good meta call, I think, into any OTK deck. And Melga is actually a problem for this deck because Melga has the one inheritable that allows you to survive battle. So Melga is actually a tough matchup for me. However, if you have an oppressive board enough, Melga can be handled. It's just like Melga having battle protection allows Melga to still swing, to trigger all its bounce effects, to do all that shenanigans that Melga can do. So and balancing is a way to attack this deck, since evade is just a broken mechanic for deleting effects and destroying effects. So yeah, and just getting deleted in general. There's so many people that need to really understand what evade does a little bit more, because during the national tournament, I feel like a lot of people forgot what evade does and tried to kill a lot of Digimon that had evade. So yeah, it's just, yeah, when you're not familiar with the deck, it's going to be causing havoc. Next we cause the big boy, Examon. Examon's crazy. His Jogress is a blue and green level 6. But with the Digimon, you can use level 5s. His ability in general is every turn when you suspend, he is going to unsuspend once. And during that same interaction of him unsuspending, you're going to suspend something of your choice. And 15k pretty much minimum, because you're usually going to have an egg. But if you don't have the egg, he's 15k. But with an egg, you're going to be guaranteed at 16, and then with the Draco, you're going to be guaranteed at 17. So there's not a lot of Digimon that can get over that threshold of 15, 16, but the ones that can, you always have evade to deal with as well, and then you can suspend other Digimon to just stop their aggression. But yeah, and the thing is with this force to attack ability with Slayer Dramon, the only thing that is required to suspend is an Examon or a Dramon. So you don't even have to suspend him yet. You can just suspend the Slayer, which has no inheritable effects of blocker, to force the attack, and then now you can block and have a second block just in case. But yeah, it's again pretty tough to deal with Exa once you get him onto the board. Most people try to play around Examon by just putting a rookie, so that you force they play a rookie and then they come up for raising and you swing with the rookie, so that you can do your shenanigans with your card with your stack. But we found that Examon usually can handle that, but if they ever go super wide, you drop an Death X on them. So I don't know who said it first, but I want to introduce the Exalock. It's actually kind of crazy. So once Examon is established on board, and your opponent usually tends to try to go wide, this is where Death X becomes super valuable. He becomes a cheaper play. If they put 2 onto the board and they have a tamer, you're golden. You can give them 10, honestly, I usually gave them 8 because I had a memory tamer set. Clear their board, and all they have to do with 8 memory is look at me. Because at this point, the board is wide. So if you come up from raising, I'm going to force you to do the attacks, and I'm going to block with Slayer. And now if you play a Digimon, Death X will handle it. So now you have to go super wide. And it just, usually if I ever got these 3 on the board, it was just waiting for game. And no matter what my life was, because they couldn't cheese me, because I usually had a big ass blocker and the ability to suspend other attacks. What else? Yeah. So this is seriously one of the most oppressive trio of cards to come out and be on the board at the same time. And there's times where you're just like, how do you deal with it? Unless they're playing a purple D-grade deck, they usually couldn't deal with it. Or by the time they deal with Examon, it's like, hey, I still got 3 swings next turn. So it's pretty scary. But yeah, it's a really cool name. I don't know who, I heard it and I was like, oh, Exalock, I like that. And then, yeah. So yeah, Death X with Examon on the board, it's just extremely oppressive. And let's just go with some consistency pieces. Basically, the searchers that are not Digimon. We got 1 blue Memboost, 3 Davis. It could have been 4, but I honestly just like the actual additional memory. And when you play a Davis, you kind of don't want to play another Davis unless you're just doing a choke play and you want to search. That's the only reason. Because once I have Davis, I'm okay with just going up and rushing a Slayer if I have a level 4 and raising, and just giving my opponent 3. Because again, once Slayer's on the board, if they have a Digimon on board, just consider it as a removal for 6. So you're gonna go raise, give them 3, sure. But then if they're just gonna hatch, whatever the Digimon on board, you're gonna force them to attack. And if you have blocker, you block it. And sometimes you don't have blocker, but you can still force like the level 4 to attack. And usually their TP is like 6 or 8, depending on the stack. And you have a lot of big top end Digimon that might potentially just pop it. Okay, so consistency pieces, 3 Davis, 1 Blue Bem. And now we have the options. Pretty much the deck's very limited because just of all these, a lot of these feel like staples in this area of the deck. There's a little leeway with these cards. Like you can run however you want, but at least a minimum of 3 Davis. I don't think anyone would run less, but you know, I could be wrong. So for the options, we have 4 left that are like actually usable besides, you know, the Blue Mem. We got the Ice Wall, of course, card's broken. Very good defensive tool. Oh my God. The turns that you can choke your opponent with using Ice Wall and you have Slayer on board just seems unfair. It really seems unfair, but that's how the game works. Like if I choke my opponent to 1 with the X Wall, Slayermon, guess what? It forces you to attack. So I don't even have to kill the Digimon for you to swing, pass turn, and I just got a free turn. Card is broken. There's nothing else. Out of security, your opponent loses 2, or you gain 2 memory, again, broken. Again, pass turn via that way. It's just a strong card. We got 2 Megadeths, super good. Came in clutch a lot of times in security, or just like, when you have Examon on board and say you don't have enough to deal with Death X, Megadething the 1 single body back doesn't feel bad at all. Just passing my turn Megadething, because now your opponent still can't raise. So single target removal just works out. And then in case I had 1 Gigadeath for bottom decking. Also just sometimes Megadething a Death X doesn't feel good. So if you have the extra memory to spare, you can bottom deck it. But overall, cards felt very good. 3 removals felt pretty good. The 4 consistency pieces and the double Death X. Like the double Death X really just puts the deck together, in my opinion, because the way you fight Exa is go wide, and then the way you fight going wide is Death X. So again, I finished 6-2 and 1 tie. I was pretty happy with the performance. Obviously, you know, it wasn't better than last year, but I mean, with Examon, I don't think I could complain. It was a good experience dealing and fighting a lot of different players. Black War Gray is a hell of a deck, y'all. Like, do not give them 2 memory. Like, giving them 2 memory, they can instantly go into the 6, given the right stack. I mean, by this point, the guys who know. And the guys who are playing Black War, you'll know. You'll learn once you start playing it. Again, I hope you guys like the list. If you kind of like these lists, I just feel free to follow my Twitter or my Instagram. I'm usually posting on there first about my experience of the tournament and stuff like that. And also just shout out to everyone I saw. Just saying thank you guys. The community has been awesome. And thank you for the people who just wanted to say hi to me. So I still appreciate that. And yeah, I'll see you guys at the next tournament, hopefully. Take care. Peace out.